this is Parker's post-Louisville interview. Take one. Will you clap, please? Will you helping hand clap?
Okay, so I started playing VGC, well, I gotta go back. I started playing Red and Blue version as like a 6-year-old kid with my two brothers. Grew up on Pokemon, loved it to death. Played every single game that came out, spin-offs too, and thought I was great at it until my friend Adam completely kicked my butt and introduced me to the concept of EV training in Diamond and Pearl. And then after that, I was like, okay, well, to be the very best like no one ever was, I gotta get into EV training. So I started EV training, playing singles, making goofy teams with Stunfisk, I don't know, doing a lot of that stuff. And then I didn't realize there was like an official format until COVID hit in Sword and Shield, and I said, you know what? Let's get in this, let's get on that grind, and I started playing in a weekly online tournament, and I don't know, I started kicking butt with stuff like Flapple and taking names at my like unofficial locals. I didn't realize there was like an official circuit to gain championship points, and then after I found out about that, I was like, you know what, I gotta try and go to one of these regionals. And in the beginning of Scarlet and Violet, I didn't know how to go to a regional, I didn't know any of those details. I joined a few communities and I found out Milwaukee was the first regional I could attend because it was close to me. And I brought a Quillfish to it, and I ended up going 6-3 with Quillfish in like Regulation B. So my Quillfish was my Flutter main answer. It worked, kind of. And that's the beginning of my VGC history. Oh, I also worked with Wolf during, like, right after the pandemic. I used to be a teacher, and I said, let's make the jump to video editing, and worked with Wolf, and that definitely helped me gain some more VGC insight.
Why didn't you stick with Quillfish?
Why didn't I stick with Quillfish? Okay, so I used Quillfish, and I learned something that I needed to know. And that is, you can only have 10% spice on your team. If you go over that 10% limit, you are cooking too hard. I may have gone a little over the limit this time with my Exeggutor team, but I could justify it, so it was okay. So what led me to Exeggutor? What led me to Exeggutor was I had experience using an Annihilate team. It was actually the team I did best with before this, and I got 11th at Peoria Regional, got on stream, felt fantastic. Looked at myself on stream and was like, wow, I don't look fantastic. And I started working out and I got on the grind. Anyway, back to why I used Exeggutor. The two teams I had experience with were Annihilate and then Hard Trick Room, Ursaluna, Armarouge stuff. And at the beginning of the Regulation H format, Len and Bravado VGC made a team with Ursaluna, Armarouge Trick Room, Indeedee, and it was like kind of the marriage of what I had done and like what I wanted to do, but they had Zoroark. So Zoroark was so cool, I was like, I gotta try this out. And I liked the team, but there were a lot of like holes with that team. There were a lot of things that I was like, this doesn't work quite as well as I want it to. And the biggest hole with the team specifically was Zoroark. I thought Zoroark had what it needed to, but it didn't have enough of it. And what I'm saying with that is, when you make a Trick Room team, you have to have the ability to function outside a Trick Room. And if it's just Zoroark, that's a lot of weight to put on the shoulders of a Pokemon that's defenses and HP are like non-existent. So I said, I need something a little bit faster. And I had a few other issues I had. Primarina was cooking my team because I had like 3 water weaknesses, and Armarouge was weak to water, Ursaluna was weak to water, Torkoal was weak to water, Gallade was neutral, Zoroark was neutral, and Indeedee was neutral. So 3 water weaknesses, 0 resist.
And the Moonblast weakness from Glade.
Yeah, there was a Moonblast weakness from Glade, so I was like, okay, having a natural water weakness, or having a natural water resist would be very nice. Sun was like kind of a water resist, but as soon as rain came up, we were kind of getting cooked, or we were kind of getting splashed.
So your team had a lot of fire weaknesses and a big weakness to Primarina.
Yes.
And Armarouge wasn't quite cutting it.
Yeah. Yes. So Armarouge wasn't quite cutting it with specifically the water weaknesses, but I also saw that the team had a weakness to being spored by Amoonguss because I had no natural switch-ins. Even my one Pokemon, Ursaluna, that is technically immune to being status because its status is itself, can't switch in. So I was like, I need a Pokemon that deters Amoonguss from coming to the battlefield. So needed a Pokemon that resisted water, needed a Pokemon that handled Amoonguss, or at least handled Amoongus's status conditions, and didn't get redirected. And then I also needed a Pokemon that was fast. So, and I didn't want to give up anything. I didn't want to give up my Expanding Force. I didn't want to give up my Ursaluna. I didn't want to give up my Gallade Wide Guard. And I was like, how can I get all of the things I already have and more? And what I did is I looked at Exeggutor and I said, this Pokemon can be fast, can do Trick Room, can use Expanding Force, is immune to Spore. I was like, it does everything I need it to do, so I said, let's try Exeggutor. It feels weird to have a Chlorophyllmon on a Trick Room team, but let's cook.
How did you find Exeggutor, or did Exeggutor find you?
I guess Exeggutor found me because here's the thing. I was resistant to Exeggutor at first. I love Exeggutor as a Pokemon, but after going to Peoria and getting a high score with like higher usage Pokemon, my brother Austin had convinced me like strong Pokemon are the way to go, because he basically was saying like, you're holding yourself back by using weaker Pokemon. But the truth is, you have to be flexible. You have to explore what no one else has explored in order to really break that ceiling. So Exeggutor kind of found me in the sense that it was grass, had Expanding Force, and I was kind of resistant. I was like, I don't feel like it'll be that good. But the thing is, as soon as my brother Austin, who is like, the team needs to be strong, saw me play the team, he was like, I'm locking in this team too. This team is good. So the fact that was the first time in my whole VGC career where my Mimi strats and his strength strats aligned, and we both were like, this is the team. We believed in the team together, which was crazy. And then my friend Adam Duke also saw it, and he locked in too. So we called ourselves the Eggheads, and we agreed whoever scored highest out of the three of us got to choose which head we were. So there's a picture out there. I'm just gonna, spoiler alert, I was the highest head, so I got to choose which one I was.
But tell me about that special attack stat, because it kind of seemed like in your post-game interview that, you know, you were on Showdown, you were looking up Armor Rouge alternatives with so you were looking for Expanding Force users, and you found White next to Armor Rouge. Exeggutor had the same exact attack stat.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So when I was looking for Pokemon with strong special attack, I was at Armor Rouge. I was looking at Armor Rouge, and I didn't even have to like scroll down. They were like connected to each other. Armor Rouge and Exeggutor have the exact same special attack, so I didn't have to give up on anything. I actually got stronger special attack because I gave Exeggutor the Focus Sash and had Terra Psychic. So instead of having Life Orb boost, I was like, you know what? Let's amp that damage further. So that was exciting.
With the Terra.
With the Terra.
So tell me about your goals for the team.
My goals for the team. So when I built this team, I was like, I feel like I'm really good at positioning Pokemon exactly where I need them to be when I want them to. And I feel like with a good Pokemon, you get value from a pivot. That's why Intimidate's so strong. That's why Pokemon like Pelipper are so strong. Because if you lead poorly and your Pokemon that you're pivoting in do nothing, you are basically taking a negative turn. You're like saying, you can hit me, I can't hit you. But if you have a Torkoal that sets Sun, that pivot can gain a ton of value. You might even be able to take 2 KOs with a pivot, which is like the fastest option in the game. So Torkoal and Didi gave Exeggutor the ability to have both Psychic Terrain and Sun with Chlorophyll. And because I could do that, I could basically just blow up the field. Joe UX9 asked me, he's like, did you use Exeggutor at all this tournament? And I was like, heck yes. Exeggutor was like my #1 Pokemon. Because I said, Joe, I want you to imagine if Lilligant, instead of having After You Eruption with Torkoal, just could do the Eruption on its own. It still has Sleep Powder, it can set Trick Room. I was like, Exeggutor does so much more than Lilligant can. I mean, Lilligant's still a good Pokemon, but egg game for life.
So, did you have, like, with that mindset, to blow everything up, like, did you have a standard lead, like, when in doubt?
Oh, okay, so my standard lead, if I didn't know what my opponent was going to lead and they didn't have a ton of dark types, was, well, this is kind of tricky. So it's based on speed stats, but always Exeggutor if I'm going the Eggy mode. And then if my opponent had weather, I would lead in Didi. And if my opponent had terrain, like Rillaboom, I would lead Torkoal, because that way I always get to control what goes up. So like if they lead, well, usually, here's the thing. If they have weather in the back, they can pivot it in, but since my Pokemon are so slow, I always get to pivot them in first and get what I want out of it, so.
Or pivot them last.
Yes, pivot them last.
Yeah, enter the field last, so they're
Yeah, so Pokemon that pivot and last get to take control of the weather. So I was always hitting something with Expanding Force. And since Pelipper's Wide Guard was on a downtrend, I could just kind of go ham with the, or go psycho, I guess you could say, with the Expanding Force.
Did you see a lot of Wide Guard this weekend?
I saw almost no Wide Guard. And the nice thing too with Exeggutor is even if they have Wide Guard, I have Sleep Powder. So I could say night night. Let's try again next turn.
Yeah, that's a really crazy utility option. Like, you're kind of rolling the dice with Sleep Powder, but you're faster than everything else.
Yeah.
Tell me about that speed stat, that chlorophyll that got you.
Okay, so Exeggutor's Chlorophyll ended up being the exact perfect option. If Exeggutor was any slower of a Pokemon, I could not use it. Exeggutor to have the Modest Nature, which boosts your special attack, so the most powerful Expanding Forces, in order to outspeed the most relevant fast Pokemon, Dragapult, you have to max out his speed investment. His speed training has to be exactly full, and if you do that, he becomes one singular point faster than Dragapult. So when I saw that that's how the calculations worked and my Exeggutor could outspeed Dragapult, it was like a match made in heaven, because one of the most oppressive threats right now is Terra Dragon Dragapult next to Sneasler, and if I lead my Indeedee my Indeedee Exeggutor or Torkoal Exeggutor mode and I have Indeedee Pivot, I can just blow up their side of the field with Terra Psychic and both go down. Or Sneasler goes down to Sash and like he can't KO either of us in return, but he can Dire Claw, which is a scary option, so.
How many times did you get Dire Claw?
How many times did I get Dire Clawed? Okay, in day 2, I'm convinced that every single Dire Claw I was hit with put me to sleep. Like, maybe not the ones on stream, but I swear I had at least 7 Dire Claw sleeps in day 2. And I still came out on top because, I mean, they were doing it into Indeedee, and I'm gonna be honest, Indeedee provided value, but it didn't need to be awake to provide that value most games, so.
Why was Trick Room such a comfortable archetype for you?
I think Trick Room was a really comfortable archetype for me specifically because with Trick Room, it feels like you have the most control. When you have weather, yeah, it's nice. Yeah, you can like slam something really hard with a Basculegion, but it doesn't matter about types. It's like you have heavy hitters. Doesn't matter. You have Ursaluna, you have Torkoal, you have Exeggutor. Like you can hit all different types on the spectrum. It's not a this type gets stronger. It's the slow boys, the thick boys get stronger. And I like the Pokemon that can just blow up the field. Like if I can position into all of my conditions are met and just take KOs, that always works well for me.
So you gave yourself a lot of big red buttons.
Yes.
How did that work over the course of a really long event?
So since I was running Trick Room, I had so many options where it's like, press this big red button and KO the entire field. And if I, basically my opponents had to play correctly over and over again. And if they made the wrong move, their whole team got deleted. And that helped a lot because I actually made a bunch of misplays. Zoroark has 2 Pokemon that it can become cleanly where the opponent cannot tell who it is. That is Exeggutor and that is Ursaluna. The opponent has no way to tell on turn 1 which Pokemon is Zoroark or out of those 2. But if you are Indeedee, you won't cast Psychic Terrain, so your opponents will instantly know. If you are Torkoal, you will not cast Sun. And if you are Gallade and they have Intimidate, the Clear Amulet it will reveal the Clear Amulet, so you'll know that it is not a Zoroark. So, or it will intimidate you, so you will know it is a Zoroark. With that said, Zoroark was a good member of the team, but I made mistakes. When I made this mistake, when I would lead Zoroark as Torkoal or Indeedee, because it's such a long day, I would call it the Zoroarkal lead or the Zinzidi lead, and it's such a long day, my opponents didn't notice either occasionally, so there was one game I had to play it straight and just like twiddle my thumbs and hope they didn't notice, and they didn't, and I just blew them up with Indeedee. Indeedee disguised as Zoroark, and honestly, that could have ended my whole run. You gotta be careful with these long events, your stamina will be the death of you. So, when I first started testing, I had an issue with Terra Dragon Dragapult and Sneasler together because they were always taking a KO no matter what with the original Len Bravado VGC team, because it was like, who do I lead? Do I lead Ursaluna next to Indeedee? They're hammering hard. Indeedee doesn't have Protect. Do I lead Torkoal next to well, I didn't have Exeggutor. Torkoal next to Armrouge. They're doing Terra Dragon, Dragon Darts, and Dire Claw, and they're probably taking a KO, and they're completely mitigating Torkoal's damage. So I had so many leads where I was just like, man, I have to sacrifice a big part of my game plan immediately, and they just get to, bam, hit me for so much damage. I wanted to be the one that was putting them on the back foot turn 1. So that's where Exeggutor came in. Exeggutor said, you know what, big psychic force. I have the lead. How are you going to respond? I didn't want to be on the back foot. I wanted to put them on the back foot.
The mind games that Zoroark played, like, did you feel your opponent, like, kind of shuffling through, like, is this what it actually is?
Okay, so when it comes to Zoroark, the biggest strength of Zoroark was I didn't have to bring him. I was playing closed team sheet while my opponents were playing, or sorry, I was playing open sheet while my opponents were playing closed. Just having Zoroark not in the game at all. Sometimes my opponents would play passively, they'd want to protect, and then I would just get Trick Room up for free. And sometimes my opponents would just be like, okay, I outspeed this Pokemon, and then I just throw a Shadow Ball at like a Golden Go and take an early kill, have so much momentum, and just run away with the game. So
that's kind of the win-win of it, right? Like if they don't suspect a Zoroark and it is Zoroark, you just get to blow something up for free. But if it isn't Zoroark and they respect it too much, then you get your Trick Room.
Yeah, this current team is the big red buttons team. You blow things up. So Zoroark helps with that because Zoroark kind of puts the fear element inside of your opponent. It's like, am I making the right call? Am I even looking at the right Pokemon? The whole weekend we kept joking about how it was a weekend filled with illusions where like everything is not as it seems. So
let's go for a team breakdown. One by one, tell me the pros and the cons and what you loved about each member of the team, what they brought to the table. Exeggutor.
Okay, so Exeggutor was definitely the egg of the hour. It definitely scrambled my opponents. It solved all of the problems I was having with the Len and Bravado VGC team. And what it did is, it was so fast it could function outside of Trick Room, taking down all of the meta threats. Obviously, if they had like other sources of speed, like Tailwind, you couldn't outspeed them. But for a Trick Room Pokemon to be able to be fast enough to threaten the fastest Pokemon in the meta, and also be slow enough without Sun to be able to exploit Trick Room, it was like a match made in heaven. When it comes to limitations with Exeggutor, one of the things that was a little tricky was if I threw Torkoal out inside of Trick Room, you could use, he couldn't be slow anymore. So Torkoal was threatening massive damage, like so much damage that usually Exeggutor could kind of just sneak to the back of my party and be safe. But sometimes it would be like, okay, well I can't pivot, Torkoal can't KO everything, he doesn't have Helping Hand boost, so Exeggutor, you're gonna probably have to take one for the team or Torkoal, and that was a little bit of a tricky position sometimes. But the fact that Torkoal was blowing things up and getting Exeggutor out safely, so that when Trick Room ended, Exeggutor could come out in Sun and outspeed everything. Chef's kiss, loved that.
And yeah, you get style points for Exeggutor.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention, yeah, you get style points for Exeggutor. Okay.
Why Gallade?
Okay, so Gallade was kind of like the surgical knife of the team. The big weakness of the team, specifically the Exeggutor mode of the team, was that dark types could just kind of come into town and just be like, okay, I don't care about Psychic, I don't care about Expanding Force. You do care when you're getting threatened with Sacred Sword, a move that ignores your defense stat, and also just kind of blows everything up. Specifically, like Archaludon gets blown up, Kingambit gets blown up, Incineroar gets blown up, can't use Fake Out because Indeedee's casting Psychic Terrain. And then on top of it, he had Psycho Cut too. Boosted with Sharpness, those moves were hitting so hard. Also, Gallade had a very, very cool option that helped me into matchups against Golden Go and Garchomp. Specifically, the Golden Go matchup it helped even more with. If the Golden Go had clicked Nasty Plot, and I wanted to get in Ursaluna in safely, because Ursaluna is a normal type, which is immune to Ghost, and Wide Guard blocks all spread moves, I could just throw Ursaluna next to a Wide Guard Gallade, block the Ghost type moves because I'm a normal type, and block the spread type moves because Wide Guard, and then you got a bear ready to attack that Golden Go, and it can't stop you. Yeah, it might have taken Gallade down in the process, but Angry Bear go burr. So
that's what teammates are for.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, speaking of teammates willing to take one for the team, Indeedee.
I feel bad. Like I brought Indeedee to top 4 of this regional, but if there was a punching bag on my team, it was Indeedee. I kind of have a reputation for loving to hit my own Pokemon. I loved playing Annihilate. And I also loved hitting Indeedee with Earthquake because as soon as I cast Trick Room, I said, "Get out of here, Indeedee. We only have like 4 to 5 turns of actually doing stuff in this Trick Room." So, well, it's 4 turns because Anyway, Indeedee, get out of here.
We only have so many Trick Room turns, and you don't hit hard enough.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Your job, time to go.
yeah, I usually would do Follow Me Earthquake, and because Indeedee could take one Earthquake and then usually 1 or 2 hits from the other thing, and Ursaluna's bulky enough to take a few, after Indeedee was KO'd, usually what would happen is Torkoal would come in to fill out the rest of his Indeedee's Trick Room turns. And since I could do Terra Fire Eruption next to Ursaluna clicking Facade, there wasn't anything in the meta that could really take that. Obviously, if Chandelure was around, that would be a problem, but I didn't run into any of those. And
I think there's Headlong Rush for that.
There is Headlong Rush for that. So maybe watch out for Air Balloon Chandelures. That could be a problem. So the Indeedee, actually I built it so that it had full bulk, so if the King Gambit I was fighting was not Terra Dark or was not Glasses, it had to commit to one of those 2 damage boosting options in order to take down my Indeedee. Which was really nice because King Gambit's a Dark type and my team really does not like dealing with Dark types. They're a big problem, so that full bulk was really helpful. And then also I decided to go with the Psychic Seed so that way I could take a lot of special attacks, and on top of it, it made it so if I was getting knocked off by a Pokemon, it did reduce damage, which meant that I wasn't always forced to Terra. So that was always really... I noticed Blood Moon wasn't around, so I didn't include the 20 special D because I didn't think it was going to be relevant. I actually didn't run into too many Blood... I don't know if I ran into any Blood Moon now that I think about it. So now we know Aggressive Burned Bear is the bear to choose right now.
Why'd you choose Psychic over Dazzling Gleam?
Oh, okay. So I chose Psychic over Dazzling Gleam because when I first started using the team, I love big damage spread moves, but the downside to big damage spread moves is that sometimes you get hit with Wide Guard, and I had Gleam, like if I had Torkoal next to Indeedee and Pelipper was in Sun, couldn't threaten damage, and was just clicking Wide Guard so that his teammate could get in safely, that was a problem. So I did Psychic on Indeedee so that way I could hit the Pelipper, goodbye Pelipper.
Now let's talk about the Big Bear.
Okay, Big Bear. Big Bear's nightmare. So Ursaluna was a big threat. I loved using Ursaluna on this team because I actually enjoyed the fact that I could hurt my own Indeedee. And Indeedee paired nicely with Ursaluna. I actually got to show this off on stream because Rillaboom's grassy terrain cuts Earthquake damage in half, and a lot of times when you're fighting Pokemon with Follow Me, it can really slow Ursaluna and the Trick Room team down because you're just hammering into a really defensive Pokemon. So a way to get around that is with spread moves, and the faster I can take out my support Pokemon, the faster I can get in my Torkoal safely at full health. So Ursaluna was clicking Earthquake and hitting Indeedee just about as much as my my opponents were hitting Indeedee. So the other nice thing about Ursaluna was it was the only other Pokemon on my team that had some form of a way to like go around Amoonguss' Spore or Dire Claw. Oh my gosh, there were so many times where my opponent wanted to click Dire Claw so badly, and I would just pivot in my Ursaluna, which was already burned, and it did no damage, and it just was like, oh, well, you can't sleep me because I'm already burned. I actually had one game where I got Dire Clawed and it gave me a status, and I was like, okay, well, now you're in real trouble because that's damage.
Oh yeah, and then you spec'd it specifically to survive a close combat and Typhlosion's Overheat.
Yeah, so I spec'd it. Well, really what happened was when I was speccing my Ursaluna, I realized I was like, I need more bulk because I kind of went all in on attack right away. And I was like, let's take a little bit out of here because you're getting the KOs anyway. And I kind of went with gut feeling. I was like, this feels right, and I was kind of just adjusting until I hit that sweet spot. Because there was things like Assault Vest Rillabooms without Grassy Terrain weren't KOing with Woodhammer, Sneasler with Close Combat wasn't KOing, Overheat from Typhlosion with, I think it was with Terra, wouldn't KO either. It was really nice to have that bulky Ursaluna that could just do damage. That's a nice thing about playing with a team for a really long time. If you play with a team for a really long time, you kind of get, you're either a guts, I got this feeling kind of player, or I know every single math calculation of all time. And I lean more here, which I feel like if you're here long enough, you start to become this, so.
And now, one of the other big red buttons, Torkoal.
Torkoal should have just been named Big Red Button because I had, when I was teaching my friends Austin and Adam how to use the team, I said, it does not matter if you don't feel like you should. If you're in front of Incineroar and Golden Go, if you're with Terra Water, if you're in front of like Terra Fire Rillaboom, if you have or if you have a healthy Torkoal and Sun Up, and they can't stop that, and they can't hit you, always go for Helping Hand, Terra Fire, Eruption. It's gonna do too much damage. There were so many Pokemon that resisted it, and it would just, boom, you're out of here. The other nice thing about Torkoal is since I would lead it next to Exeggutor a lot of the time, and they were like conditioned to expect that like Pivot In and DD big expanding force mode, sometimes I just click Sleep Powder with Exeggutor with that really fast Sleep Powder and click Eruption and just win the game on turn 1. Because big Eruption goes boom. And it's like, if only one Pokemon's attacking into Torkoal on the physical side, it's probably not even gonna do that much damage. And they want to remove Exeggutor's Sash, so there are so many mind games at play. Every single person I fought saw Clear Smog and was like, oh, okay, that's like a Dozo answer, that's like a Terra Archaludon answer. Clear Smog was more for me, was more to more hitting my own guys, because Ursaluna did not like being Intimidate cycled by Incineroar, so there were a few games where I would just be like, you know what, my opponent, and this wasn't necessarily in the tournament, this was also in practice, but my opponent would be like, okay, I got the Ursaluna down to -3. It's not going to do big damage. I can switch Incineroar in at full health. It'll take it, whatever. I'd Clear Smog with my Torkoal into my Ursaluna and boom. Don't care that I wiped out Torkoal. I wiped out the whole field, you know, and that, you know, not every Pokemon needs to make it to the end of the game. As long as you have something standing, you're good. Hisuian Zoroark. Oh, gosh, what to say about Hisuian Zoroark? That's kind of the Pokemon that I felt like I had the most to optimize on, like I felt like was most underexplored. The nice thing about it was Helping Hand Terra Normal, sorry, not Terra Normal, Helping Hand Terra Stellar Hyper Voice hit so darn hard. It was my answer into the Garchomp Dragonite matchup. Either they attacked, here's the thing, to stop Trick Room, they have to double you. They have to click Earthquake, they have to click Terra Flying, Terra Blast. They need to slow down the Trick Room, and they need to take more of your resources away. And the fact that I could just click Helping Hand Terra Hyper Voice and just blow up a Garchomp, or take multi-scale off the Dragonite, and if they attacked Indeedee, the game's pretty much set right there. Because what are you gonna do? Are you gonna just like are you gonna protect and let Indeedee get Trick Room up? Because Ursaluna's sitting right there, you're gonna give him the Flame or proc. Well, it's not an Ursaluna actually, you know, it's kind of the mind games of it all, so.
But you mentioned Terra Normal, you ran Terra Stellar.
Yes, I ran Terra Stellar. I was Terra Normal up until the day before the tournament, and an issue I was running into was a lot of times my opponent would be like, okay, I've got you pinned. You are Terra Normal, Hyper Voice, Terra Normal. I was Hyper Beam at the time because that's what the original team was. I said, you know what? I just need a button that chunks things, and if they switch in a Ghost type, they still have to sweat. So I had Terra Blast, and with the Terra Stellar, I got to keep my big Hyper Voice option, but I also got to be like, okay, Terra your Vivian to Ghost. I can still hit you. Bring your Golden Go in. I can still hit you. And so that, while that wasn't used very frequently, there was one set without it I would not have been able to win. So Terra Stellar actually defensively worked out better too, because the most common Pokemon at the most recent regional was Sneasler. And Sneasler can only hit you with, I mean, unless you have a non-stab move, it can only hit you with Poison, which you resist, and it can't hit you with Fighting at all. Terra Normal Zoroark was like, okay, I'm Sneasler food now. But since it was a 2-shot with Dire Claw, or sometimes 3, it was very nice.
That way you could Hyper Voice in front of Sneasler. If you bring it down to Sash and it close combats into your slot, you're not going.
Yeah, exactly, you're safe.
Okay, so what do you think about Zoroark's potential on other non-Trick Room teams?
I think that Zoroark is the most underexplored Pokemon right now. I think that the fact that it's a Pokemon that you can, like, condition your opponent to click Fake Out into, and then just blow them up with Terra Normal Hyper Voice is insane. Like, there are so many Pokemon that will go down to Terra Normal helping Hyper Voice. This Pokemon needs to be looked at a little bit more. Also, the only Pokemon I can cleanly disguise myself are Ursaluna and Exeggutor, and I felt like I was getting so much value out of just 2. Imagine if there were 5 other Pokemon that it could cleanly disguise themselves as a Zoroark. That sounds like so many mind games, so many things you could do with that. I do think that you probably want Farigiraf or Indeedee, because Sucker Punch is going to be a game ender for your Zoroark.
Terra or no Terra?
Yeah, well, unless you're like Terra Fairy or Sash, but explore Zoroark, people, I'm telling you. Bring closed team sheet to open team sheet, that's all I'm saying. Okay, so the way that the team handles Dragapult Sneasler, this isn't like the definitive you do this, you win every single time, But a good option into Dragapult Sneasler is lead Exeggutor, lead Torkoal or Indeedee, depending on what your opponent has, and just pivot the other one out and click Psychic Terrain. So that way you are casting Sun, you're casting Psychic Terrain, you have big Expanding Force that's going to one-shot the Dragapult, and probably also bring the Indeedee either down to, or not Indeedee, the Sneasler down to Sash, or just take it out of the picture entirely. So the other thing too is you can also just click Sleep Powder into Sneasler and then click Eruption or something with Torkoal. And if you are fighting your opponent and you want to do this Expanding Force shenanigans against them, if your opponent has the ability to cast Grassy or Electric Terrain, you should definitely lead Exeggutor and put Torkoal out next to it. That way you get to cast the Sun. If your opponent has the ability to cast Rain, it has Pelipper, put Exeggutor next to Indeedee. So that way, when you pivot Indeedee in, you'll make it sunny, and it's gonna happen almost every time because Indeedee and Torkoal are both so slow as Pokemon.
Yeah, like you spec the Indeedee to be minimum speed, so if Rillaboom and Indeedee went out at the same time, which happened in one of your feature matches,
yeah,
Psychic Terrain will win.
Yes, so Indeedee and Torkoal are both absolute lowest speed possible, and that's so that they always win on the turn they go out. So even if you mess up and you put the Pokemon out and the other person puts their Pokemon out, you're still at an advantage. And sometimes that's a good thing. Like, I've had games where my opponent can't afford to lose their weather, so you just get to punish them. You just get to exert some pressure on it. But usually it's good to have your weather in the back so that way you can pivot it in and gain control. Never good to lose control.
Alright, your Dozo-Giri matchup. How do you play into that?
This is the best team I've ever had into Dondozo Tatsugiri. There are so many answers into it. Exeggutor has fast Sleep Powder. We have Trick Room, so we can just do big damage. Gallade can do Sacred Sword to do massive damage. You can do Clear Smog with Torkoal to cut their damage output. Psychic Terrain, Psychic Terra Expanding Force just does so much damage into Dondozo. Also, if they Terra Steel to block your Clear Smog, Sacred Sword is gonna cut through that thing like butter. It's gonna feel so good.
Garchomp Dragonite.
Okay, so if you're going up against the Garchomp Dragonite lead, usually what I like to do, and this isn't the only option, is I like to lead Zoroark disguised as something plus Indeedee. Because if you go Helping Hand, Terra, Stellar, Hyper Voice, I think every single Garchomp I ever have fought with that goes down. Unless they Terra to something, or they're AV, or they're not max attack, max speed, which all of them seem to be right now because they don't want to lose to other Garchomp. If they don't protect, goodbye Garchomp. And then also on top of it, Dragonite will attack either Indeedee, which it won't KO, or it'll attack Zoroark, which it will KO, which will then make it so you can bring out your Exeggutor. And if you have Torkoal in the back, you just pivot Indeedee out, throw in Torkoal, and then Exeggutor becomes fast, has that Psy-Spam mode, and Dragonite should probably be bye-bye by then, you know, so.
Archaludon Basculegion Rain.
Okay, so Archaludon Basculegion Rain is a tough matchup for this team because Sun is, I mean, fire types don't want to fight water types. Water types do want to fight fire types. So even if you are winning the weather war, you're still hurting when you take damage. Whereas if they win the weather war, fire types are not going to do as much into water types. So something to note is that in this matchup, it is absolutely imperative that you win the weather war. With that said, to beat Archaludon, we do have answers. We have Ursaluna, which hits for super effective and hits so hard. So as long as they are not, or you are not, proccing their stamina defense boost, you have the ability to hit them so hard. You might have to do a little bit of a Terra Mind game with them because they might want to Terra Grass to block your ground move. They might want to stay so they block your Facade. That's a little bit of a 50-50, but there's an option. Also, if they have Mouse Hold and you have Zoroark, just do Helping Hand, Terra, Normal, Hyper Voice, and you will blow up that Mouse Hold. Yes, they will get one stamina proc, but if you look like Ursaluna with Zoroark, they're probably going to want to Body Press you, which will do no damage to you because you're Ghost type. But if you look like Ursaluna, they're not inclined to hit you with Electro Shot because you're a Ground type and you're immune to that. So there's definitely some mind games going on there.
And also, if you disguise as Gallade, you kind of force a Terra too, because they don't want to take the Sacred Sword.
That's so true. If you make Zoroark look like Gallade, all your Dark type problems and your your steel type problems might go away in front of you. You might just be like, okay, you no longer resist the hyper voice, you're taking massive damage.
Magmar Electabuzz Redirection.
Okay, so if you're fighting Magmar Electabuzz Redirection, what I like to do is I usually like to lead 2 Trick Room setters, so like Follow Me Indeedee and Exeggutor, and I just want to ensure that I get Trick Room up. Then, what I'll do is usually pivot in Ursaluna and click Expanding Force with Exeggutor, because that way I'm threatening damage. You want to throw Sleep Powders out, but you can't really because the Follow Me is kind of scary. You can make a read because I don't know. Magmar is a little bit harder than Electabuzz in my opinion, but like they're both super doable. You can click Helping Hand Expanding Force, you can do big damage. Also, Magmar is a little bit more of a problem because Magmar with Overheat will do big damage to Torkoal because it's sun boosted. So just be careful with that matchup. If you can get Magmar to force his Terra so that when Torkoal comes in, you can just blow him up with the big red button.
Imprison Trick Room Delphox.
Okay, Imprison Trick Room Delphox is that feels like a 50-50 matchup. I got really lucky and I dodged a lot of them on my way to Top Cut, but there are options. It's kind of a 50-50 read because Zoroark, I feel like on all of these I've said Zoroark is a good option. It's usually Zoroark or Exeggutor. As you get to play the team more, you will see that like Follow Me Indeedee plus Trick Room is a good option. But with this matchup specifically, I usually like to lead Indeedee plus Zoroark or Gallade because with Indeedee and Zoroark, you can do Helping Hand Terra Normal Hyper Voice. That should pick up Delphox. It's done it for me every time. It should bring Indeedee close to Sash if they are Sash, and if it's not Sash, it's doing a significant chunk with Helping Hand Terra Normal Hyper Voice. Regardless, if they click Imprison, you get to hit them with another one. If they don't click Imprison and they click Expanding Force, you're in a little bit of a tight spot because Zoroark most likely has gone down, which means you're a little bit behind. But you do have Gallade. You can have Exeggutor. Exeggutor would have to hit him with an Energy Ball and then probably take a hit from somebody else because you could pivot in Torkoal into the Revenge KO spot. There's a lot of mind games going on here, and basically this is one that you kind of have to play out and feel out, but you do have options.
And if you anticipate the male Indeedee Delphox lead, you could spoof Zoroark as Indeedee.
Oh yes, that is, you can add, that's completely correct. Male Indeedee is faster than female Indeedee. So because of that, you can have your Zoroark look like Indeedee if you believe that they're going to lead with Indeedee, which means that you can have Indeedee threaten big damage into Pokemon, which it almost never can do. So, oh, also something to note, which is very difficult to have happen, you can pivot your Zoroark out early game, pivot out the other Pokemon, and as long as they're at full health and they go to the back of your party, you can throw Zoroark out later to look like another Pokemon. So like you can throw Zoroark out if Psychic Terrain is out and make it look like an Indeedee and take advantage of that. I've had it where I've thrown out Torkoal in Sun for the second time against a Rillaboom, and they were like, oh, I have to stop it with Fake Out so it doesn't click me click Eruption into me. And I just clicked Terra Stellar Hyper Voice into it and just blew up his whole side of the board because he threatened no damage into my Ghost type Zoroark, or Ghost and Normal.
Yeah, like Zoroark doesn't always have to be a lead.
No, Zoroark can come in the back. It's a lot harder to position. It's a lot more risky, especially if you're trying to go for the Trick Room mode. But Zoroark is a Pokemon, whether it has Disguise or not. So, okay, so talking about specific rounds. Obviously in the first stream match, I got to show the power of the Expanding Force mode on Exeggutor. I feel like the team played pretty well. Something to note is a lot of times you'll fight Torkoal versus Rillaboom under Sun. And usually in that matchup, you still win, especially if they don't have high horsepower, just because you're doing so much damage with your Terra Fire boosted Weather Balls into him. Like, that's usually how I handle that matchup. Something else to note is, in that last matchup, I definitely, like the one against Andrew Zhang, I definitely went for the cheeky Zoroark stream play, and I should have played it more honest. I should have gone for the Trick Room route. I know they wanted to Intimidate Cycle my Ursaluna, and I could have totally probably made the play where I Clear Smog into myself with Torkoal. I think that probably would have been a lot better. But I honestly, like, playing for 2 days straight is so draining. Like, all of these fantastic players were making mistakes. So if you're interested in playing in a tournament, the best way to like get good is to go to a tournament and play, because it's hard. It's hard work. Like, I'm still exhausted. I'm still tripping over my words after today, because like today is like we're almost 48 hours out from the tournament. We had to drive 7 hours to get home, and
24 hours.
It's only been 24 hours.
Yeah, we were in Louisville yesterday.
I feel like I've been conscious for like 2 days worth of time, so it's...
No, like, yeah, like, talk about the, just like the brain fog going into a big tournament.
So, the brain fog going into this tournament was insane. I would not have made it as far as I did without the support of my friends. Honestly, like, they were like a race car pit crew. Like, they were like handing me Gatorades, and like, if you're doing like well, or if you have like a family or someone that wants to join you and help out, like, cherish them. They will be the people. Like, the only reason I am here right now doing this is because of my friends. My best friend actually gave me the shirt off of his back because I needed it. So I won't explain more details on that. But what was I gonna say? Cherish your friends. They're gonna help you through this, and you're gonna make a lot of friends if you go to these events, because it's a good time, and you meet people, and it's just a fantastic time and a good hobby to have. So, oh, one thing I have to explain. People asked about the fit. Okay, gotta explain the fit. Why I was wearing a suit. So I wore this suit because last time I was on stream, I was not feeling like my best self. I was 40 pounds heavier. It was a long day. I was sweaty. I was not feeling my best self. So anyway, I got the pictures and I was like, man, there are not a lot of good photos of me on stream that I want to show to people. So I was like, you know what? I just went to a wedding. I have a nice suit from it. It was my brother's. I was like, it's got good vibes. I'm gonna pack this suit into my briefcase, and you know, if I get day 2, maybe it'll be a second chance to make a good impression. Oh, I also had, like, people told me I was charismatic on my stream, and they're like, yeah, you'd make a great streamer. Like, you should, or not a streamer, a great caster. Like, you should give me your email and we'll connect you. And I gave them the wrong email, so I never got to connect with them. And I was like, you know what? If I get an opportunity again, I'm gonna bring my A game. I'm gonna bring my best self. So, brought the suit. The suit gave me a power bonus. People were definitely like, okay, this man came to play. This man means business. So, the suit makes me feel good. Yeah, I would like that.
I guess, is there anything you do differently with the team?
Is there anything I'd do differently with the team? That's a great question. I think the only thing I could say is I could have played differently. Honestly, this team felt like the best team I've ever brought to a regional. I felt like I had answers to everything. I felt like even if it was a bad matchup, I had ways to play around it. My opponents were all fantastic. It was a long day. Like, and there are so many Zoroark mind games, and my opponents were getting tired. I was getting tired. There was like great play on all sides, and there was also like some things that I probably shouldn't have gotten away with on both sides. Like, I probably shouldn't have sent out Zoroark that looked like the wrong thing. I also shouldn't have gotten away with it. You know, like, my opponents all played fantastic, and if I played you, like, I have nothing but respect for you. So, yeah, so to counter brain fog, just have simple modes. Like, when I did Peoria, I had Icy Wind, Iron Bundle, and Choice Band Rock Slide Arcanine. I said, this does damage, you figure out a way around it while I take a little bit of a mental break. Can you handle this? Because if you can't handle this, then I'm moving to the next set. But also, the motto of this whole team was, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. So we were hitting hard and hoping things went well, and they did, so. Closing thoughts. Team was fantastic. I honestly feel like I probably could have played a little bit better. I feel like I brought the best I could for the team, but I do feel like I could have done more for it. So next time, I don't know if Exeggutor is going to be the call next time, but I hope to bring something fun and something exciting for you, because I don't know. When I build, I look for things that I know are going to be exciting to me. Like, 'cause I got to play to have fun, because if I'm not having fun, what's the point of being there? Like, I want to do my best, but I'm here to have a good time, and I hope you are too.
A good time and a long time.
I'm here for a good time. I hope that my tournament run is a long time, but we're playing our best game. I don't know. Okay, people I have to shout out. I have to shout out the Eggheads, the people that ran the Exeggutor team with me. They didn't have as much practice as I did, but they definitely, I feel like even now there's so many things we're uncovering about this team. There's a lot of good stuff. So the Eggheads are me, my brother Austin Simmons, and my friend Adam Duke. I couldn't have done it without them. I have to shout out my other brother Mac, who's been like with me the entire time, talked to me about everything, was excited about it, was a good practice buddy. Got to shout out the PokePal SmackDown Discord. We practice every Thursday. Everybody in there is fantastic, very creative. It could go wild. Trey. So my team, I was really worried going into this tournament because we played a best of 7 like 2 nights before, and he had like a Scrafty Dragon Tail, no Intimidate, Moxie Scrafty team, and I won the first 3, and then he won the final 4. And I was like, maybe this team doesn't have the sauce. Maybe Scrafty's cooking us. Maybe this team needs some changes. But it really helped me in some of my bad matchups. Like he had it was a dark type. He had rain. It gave me some other options to play around it. I gotta give a shout out to Lay Potato Chip, Austin, Georgia, Amber, John, my friend Scott, Lane, who were my digital cheerleaders. They were sending me memes the whole time. My dad, my mom, who I both love, regardless of their health status, because I talked about it on stream how Dad had surgery. Love you both, making sure that's known. Connor Bramblett. Oh my goodness, Zking. He went and played XD Gale of Darkness just to make me a Gallade, and that Gallade spirit was definitely on the team. The Gallade didn't make the team because I accidentally gave it a bottle cap I wasn't supposed to, but Zking, that Gallade spirit was there. Thank you so much. I also have to give a shout out to Lego, who cooks maybe a little too hard sometimes, but you know what? That's always cool with me. I like exploring options nobody is looking at. Oh yeah, you can find me on YouTube or Twitter. My tag is @PSMotionGraphics. Also, check out Tierzoo. I do editing for that channel. He's fantastic. And if you want to learn about animals and see fun Pokemon graphics, I'm involved with that. So, fun stuff. Thank you for watching the video. I hope you had a good time. And I'm sharing the rental. Show me some of your best plays with the egg team. I want to see them. And I hope this was a helping hand for you. I don't know.